Hello and welcome. My name's Angie Holden and I'm the blogger behind The Country Chic Cottage. So today we're going to talk about cutting shrink plastic with your Cricut machine. Now, this project uses the deep point blade, so you can either use your Maker series or your Explore series for this project. Either one will work. So if you've been around this YouTube channel for a while, I did some photo ornaments with Sublimation, and I promised you a tutorial for making photo ornaments with your inkjet printer. No Sublimation printer required. And that's what we're going to do today. So I made some adorable photo ornaments using shrink plastic. So this is like the stuff maybe you used when you were crafting as a kid. Shrinky dinks might be what you called it. It is officially called shrink plastic, and they have a printable version. So this prints in your inkjet printer, then you can cut it with your Cricut, and then you can shrink it to make a sturdy plastic ornament for your holiday tree. So I'm going to talk about the type of shrink plastic that you can use, the type that maybe you don't want to use. We're going to talk about how to cut shrink plastic, how to shrink it down, what are my best tips and tricks for doing that. All of that is going to be in this video. So let's get started looking at the supplies we're going to use. For this project, you will need your shrink film, and we're going to talk about the differences in shrink film in just a minute. You'll need your strong grip mat. Deep point blade is what I recommend, as well as your brayer. Any Cricut machine that will accept the deep point blade will work with this. So I'm going to use my Maker 3. Explore Air 2, Explorer 3, Original Maker will all work with this project. You will also need something to shrink your shrink film. My preferable method is in an oven. However, I will show an alternate method with a heat gun. So now let's talk about the different shrink film types. I like to use printable shrink film. This is a brand that I've used several times and I really like it. I will link to it in the description below. Now, this brand comes in clear as well as white. So the clear will not cut on your Cricut machine. That is because it's clear, so you can see that here, and your Cricut machine will not be able to read the registration marks to cut the film itself. So instead I use the white version. I can run it through my inkjet printer, print right on it with my design, and cut it with my Cricut machine. So now that you have all those supplies, let's take a look in Design Space at how to design our photo ornaments, because we're going to use our Cricut machine to cut this shrink plastic. So we're going to make these ornaments 3 different ways. You will need to import your images into Cricut Design Space, and you do that with the upload button, and then you choose the image on your computer. I've already done that and uploaded 3 images for my ornaments. Now the first one, I uploaded it and I removed the background with the new tool in Design Space. So it came in looking just like this, and I'm going to cut it as an ornament just like this. Now, a couple things we need to keep in mind. The first is that my package of shrink plastic says that it will shrink to 20% of the size that you cut it. So I'm going to need to cut it really big to get an ornament that's any size. However, the print then cut feature on Cricut Design Space is only 6.75 inches by 9.25 inches. So I will need to resize using the arrow buttons to where it is less than that. Then I just need to make sure it says print then cut. And to do that, you will want to make sure that either the Maker or Explore series are chosen, because the Cricut Joy does not do print then cut. So now I have my first ornament ready to cut, because that's all I'm going to do. And it's 6.59 inches by 9.223 inches is the final size I came up with. So now let's talk about another option. The next option we're going to do is this hexagon. And I have the illustration there to show you, but I have my picture here, and I have drawn a hexagon. To draw a hexagon, I just used the shape feature in Cricut Design Space. I made the hexagon the size I want to make my ornament, which is 7.762 by 6.721. So that's like the maximum size I can make it. And then you just lay it over your picture in the location where it's covering the portion of the picture that you want. You can also resize your picture if you need to. And then you'll pick both the hexagon and your picture and click slice. Once that's done, we are just going to delete everything off except for your ornament now. Now for this one, I'm going to add a hole for the ribbon at the end. I did not add a hole on this one because I'm going to use a hole punch just to illustrate the difference between the two. To add a hole to this one, I'm going to do shapes. I'm going to put a circle. I'm going to make that circle about like 0.8 or so, 0.778, that's fine. Large enough so when it shrinks, it's still going to be able to fit a ribbon through it. And then we're going to pick them both, and I like to do a line, center horizontally, and then slice. And then we will delete off the circles, and we are left with an ornament with a circle inside. So this is one way to make a picture ornament. The next way is to combine these two methods together. So for this picture, I uploaded it. Again, I removed the background with the tool in Cricut Design Space, and I made a circle ornament that is 6.748 inches around. So it is like the maximum size I could make with my Cricut machine. And so I want to add this ornament to this circle. So first of all, I'm going to make the circle white. Basically, I want the white of the shrink plastic to show through the ornament background. And then I do want to copy this circle and paste it and drop another one down here. So the first thing we need to do is locate the picture on our circle where we want it to be, pick both and click slice. Then we'll want to delete everything except for our image. And now we have our circle and our image. Now on this one, I'm going to add a hole as well. So I'm going to go ahead and add the hole next. So I need a circle. We are going to make it about 0.7-ish. Put those together, just pick the two circles, align, center horizontally, and then slice. You will want to make sure you only have your two circles chosen and not your picture in that case. So now I have a circle with a hole in it and my picture. So I want to arrange send to back with my circle, and then I want to put these two over each other where they are aligned together. So that looks pretty good. And then I'm going to pick everything and click flatten. And now this is a print then cut ornament with a hole cut out of it. It will print my design and then it will cut around the circle and cut around this hole in the center. It will not cut around my image because I flattened it. So now let's click make it and look at our options. The first thing you'll see is your print and cut ornaments on your mats, and you do want to check those just to make sure they look okay. There is no need to mirror. In this case, we are printing on the top of our shrink plastic, so we're going to click continue. You want to go ahead and send these to your printer. I recommend turning off bleed and using the system dialog box. Be sure to turn on best quality print settings and pick a gloss paper setting if that's an option on your printer. And then print each of these, and then you'll be ready to cut. When you're ready to cut, the material setting that I like to use, I like to click Browse on Materials and type in Plastic, search, and use plastic packaging as my cut settings. So this almost cuts through it at least most of the time. Sometimes you have to do an extra pass or two, and I will show you how to do that as well. So now we're ready to cut. So let's head to our Cricut machine and cut our shrink plastic. Here are those ornaments all printed onto our shrink plastic film. Now, you do want to allow this to dry for like 5-10 minutes before you cut it. Otherwise, the ink will still be wet. And then we're going to add it to our strong grip mat. So we just want to line it up with the grids. And we want to press this down really well onto the strong grip mat. So I recommend the brayer. And I just run it over the corner, making sure my ink isn't wet. And then just start running it over the entire print, adhering it down to my strong grip mat. And once that's down on the mat, we're ready to cut. So let's head to our Cricut machine and cut our shrink plastic. So you'll want to add your deep point blade to your Cricut machine, put it into the clamp. I've also moved my white star wheels all the way over to the right, just in case that ink is a little wet. I don't want to drag the star wheels through it. So now my Cricut machine is ready, and I can load my mat by pressing the arrow button. Once your mat's loaded, just press the button to cut. First, it'll read your registration marks to find where the cuts need to be. And then it will cut your design. Once the cut's done, you'll want to check your cut. Do not unload it from the machine. Start lifting up the shrink plastic and see if it's cut through. Generally, I have to do a couple more passes. So I'm going to click the arrow button again and let it go about 2 more passes, pause the cut and check again. So I just paused my machine after a few passes. I lift up the shrink plastic again, and now I can see that it is indeed cut through. I will just unload the mat. Then we can just start removing this from the mat. And I like to turn this portion over and then just peel the mat back from the material. And that inner circle should just pop right out, and you can discard that as well. Now your project is ready for shrinking. During the cutting process, your blade can get really gunked up with all that plastic. So you may want to pause the machine occasionally, remove any debris from the blade, even push it out and sort of clean it off, and then add it back to the machine. Here are all my pieces completely cut out. So some of these I added a circle in design space to the top. If you do not do that, you will need to punch a hole before you shrink it. So it will not be possible to punch the hole after the shrinking is complete. So I like to use a hole punch and just punch a hole in any that I don't beforehand. And then the Cricut does make like little white specks of the plastic get all over your project. I like to get as many of those off as possible. As the plastic melts, those little pieces can kind of get embedded in and like make your project a little bit speckled, I would say is the word. So I just like to wipe these down before shrinking them. So I'm going to show you my favorite way to do shrink plastic, and then I will talk about an alternate method. So I have a special oven for my craft room, and that's what I'm going to be using. I'm going to do 350 degrees for 2 to 3 minutes according to the directions on the package of shrink film that I'm using. If you're using a different brand, please follow those instructions. So this tray comes with my oven, and I like to line it with parchment paper, put my shrink plastic down, and then cover that with another sheet of parchment paper. This top will keep it from curling too much and sticking to itself. Now let's head to the oven, put this inside, and watch it shrink. I'm gonna add the tray to the inside, set my timer for 3 minutes. As you can see, as the shrink plastic heats, it will curl up. It'll curl up significantly and you'll think that it's gonna stick to each other, but in the end, it flattens back out and you have a cute ornament. After right at 2 minutes, the ornament has completely shrunk, so I'm gonna go ahead and take it out of the oven. Here are those ornaments out of the oven. So what I like to do, as soon as I take an ornament out of the oven, I put it on a flat surface and use a heat-resistant glove, press down from the top while the ornament cools. This makes it as flat as possible once you have your ornament completed. And then these are pretty cool at this point, so I will remove them from the parchment paper, and you can see each of our photo ornaments. Now, I promised you an alternate method for making these. It's not the method I prefer, but a lot of people use it. So what they do is use a heat gun and a heat-resistant mat, like the Easy Press mat. Put your shrink plastic on the mat and start heating it up with the heat gun, and it will shrink. You will need something like popsicle sticks or something to kind of hold it flat, because it will curl up onto itself and kind of make a jumbled mess. Now this one I made with that method. Let me show you why I don't like it. This is the version I made with the heat gun method, and you can see how many ridges are in it. I just can't get consistent heating or a completely flat surface with this method. Alternatively, this is the one that I did in the oven, and as you can see, it's like almost completely flat, no little ridges and bumps, and it looks really, really good. That's why I prefer the oven method for my shrink plastic, but you may prefer the heat gun method. So now that these are done, you can see just how much they shrunk, and the colors intensify as they shrink. So you will want to keep that in mind when choosing pictures. Now the ones I cut the hole in with my Cricut machine have a nice large hole. The one I cut the hole in with the hole punch, the hole is significantly smaller, so keep that in mind as well. Now all that's left to do is just string some ribbon onto each of these, tie it into a knot, and hang it on the tree. So there you can see my completed photo ornament with an inkjet printer and my Cricut machine and shrink plastic. I really think you'll love how each of these turn out and making photo ornaments with your Cricut machine. So now as an adult, you too can play with shrink plastic. This project is amazing. You will love the way it turns out. Now, I've said it before, but I'm gonna say it one more time. This just uses your inkjet printer. You wanna make sure that the shrink film that you purchase says that it's printable and that it's good on inkjet printers. You don't need a sublimation printer for this. You don't need to sublimate on top of anything. You just print right on that shrink plastic, cut it, and shrink it down. Now, I showed you a couple different ways to do that. You can pick and choose, play around with the way that you like best. Remember, if you want to make nice big ornaments like this, it will take like an entire sheet of shrink plastic just about to make the larger ornaments. However, this is the way I like them, but you can make smaller ones as well if you wanted to make the smaller ornaments and cut more per sheet. So you do want to keep that in mind when you're purchasing your shrink plastic, because it, like the brands that I'm linking to, only comes like 6 sheets per package. So you want to purchase plenty if you wanted to make like a whole tree of photo ornaments or enough photo ornaments to give as gifts. Now these do get pretty thick when you shrink them down, which I love. So now they are like a stiff plastic instead of that super flimsy sheet that we ran through our printer. So pretty cool process, and you can use this for other crafts as well. So now that you know how to cut shrink plastic with your Cricut machine, like the possibilities are endless. So hopefully you enjoyed this. If you did, give us a thumbs up. If you have any questions about cutting shrink plastic with your Cricut machine, please feel free to drop down in the comment section, ask away. And if you haven't already, head on over to our YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button. We have videos like this every week, and trust me, you don't want to miss any of those. So thank you all so much for joining me, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.